You are listening to the Becoming the Wealthy You podcast with Jermaine Foley. If you're a woman who makes good money in your career or business, but you're not building wealth like you want to, then you're in the right place. In this podcast, you'll learn how to stop overspending, break free from the cycle of debt, save lots of cash, and become the wealthy woman you were born to be. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Deanna Yates, and you are absolutely going to love her, especially if you have clutter in your house like I sometimes do. You're going to get so much value and so many tips and strategies from today's episode. So, Deanna, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jermaine. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Oh my gosh. So, before we dive in, just introduce yourself to the audience and let them know what you do and why you love to talk about decluttering so much.
All right. Well, my name is Deanna Yates, and if you love podcasts, then come on over. I have a podcast as well. It's called Wannabe Clutter. Jermaine was on my show, and I just, I love helping families let go of the clutter in their lives, and that is physical, emotional, mental. I think our stuff affects us in so many different ways, and we don't realize that all of these emotions and these different beliefs we have about ourselves often manifest and show up in the things we buy and what we surround ourselves with. And so I am on a mission to help busy moms and families clear out the stuff they don't need, that they don't want, and allow them to live life to the fullest, to really just embrace who they are, where they're at, what they want life to be like, and just bring more peace and calm into their lives.
So yes, I was on the podcast recently. It was episode 243, and we talked about debt and we talked about overspending. And it's so interesting how the two marry, decluttering and getting your finances together, because a lot of times overspending is what creates the clutter and the debt and the lack of savings, right? Because you're buying a bunch of things and that turns into clutter. And then you have the financial challenges that go along with that. Yeah, I think our worlds, our messages just align so well.
Me too. And I think a lot of it just stems from this idea of scarcity or lack. We're not sure exactly of who we want to be, or we're not really sure of the goals we have for our lives. And in our culture and society today, where everything is so easy to get, one button, one click purchases, and all of the social media messages that are coming at us that tell us we need more, more, more. And, all of this stuff allows it's so much easier to go into debt these days. Credit cards and, payday loans and all these things are so much easier to access this credit and these funds for us. And then, it's easier to then buy stuff because of the one-click buys and these social media, people, and just being able to see everyone's highlight reels and saying oh, I want that. And if I just buy that, I will be able to be that person too. When we don't take the minute to step back, and it's not a minute, it takes longer than that, but to step back and say what do I really want? What are my values? What are the things I want to be saving for? How do I want my money to actually help me get the life that I want to be living? And then, like you said, a lot of that will then manifest in the stuff we have, because we just will buy it. And then, we got to figure out what to do with all the stuff we bought with the funds we no longer have.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head when you talk about how easy it is. Now they have these systems like Klarna and Affirm and Afterpay, and you can just pay for this weekly. And sometimes when you look at that's $5 a week, I can do that. But then when you have 6 of those, you wonder, you start to wonder, where's all my money going? So this is a conversation that we must have. So a lot of women listening in my audience, they make good money, but they still feel stuck financially. And I've found, again, that clutter often plays a role. In your experience, how are clutter and overspending correlated? I know we kind of just talked about it, but let's go a little deeper.
Sure. Okay. So I think what happens is they compound on each other. Does that make sense? So it's like you buy
Hmm.
one thing and then it doesn't quite do what you wanted it to do, or maybe it doesn't live up to the hype. And so you just stick it off into the closet because you have space. And then so you buy something else because you think, well, that didn't quite solve the problem or didn't do what I wanted it to do. I buy something else. And now either that does or doesn't solve the problem, but then another problem arises. And we buy stuff because we're trying to solve problems, right? Whether that is, I don't have enough time, so I want to buy something that's going to, help save me time, promises to help save me time or make things more convenient, or just it fills a need, right? We're bored, we're tired, we're exhausted, we're overwhelmed. We buy things for solutions, right? But I think sometimes we need to come back to the idea that maybe less is more. Maybe instead of buying something for the solution, we can look at the problem and say, is there a different way I can address this? Is there another angle I can look at this? How are my immediate biases tapping into this and saying like, oh, there is only one solution. Where if we step back and we get a little more curious and we say, okay, why is this a problem? Or what is the real problem? I was going to use snacks. I just, it's the afternoon and I'm kind of coming up on my time where I'm like, I had lunch. I kind of want a snack, as we're recording this. And so it's like, if I'm coming up to that, like I could go have a snack or I could look at the problem and say, did I eat properly for lunch, right? Did I maybe tomorrow I should look at what I ate today and say like maybe I need to eat a little bit bigger lunch so that I'm not having 200 extra calories for lunch. I don't know why this is the example I'm coming up with. You can talk about the money stuff. That is not my super strong suit. So I'm going to talk about food and stuff. So, you know, instead of having 200 extra calories for a snack, maybe if I had 100 extra calories at lunch, right? There's a 100-calorie deficit there between the two. And that might actually help me reach my goal of not overeating throughout the day. Same if I'm, is there a different solution I could be using to this stuff money problem, right? That might at the forefront, right? You saying, I'm going to eat 100 extra calories for lunch. You're going to go, no, that is not going to help me. But if you realize it's going to help you save 200 calories later, maybe that is the right thing for you in the moment so that you're not feeling deprived. You're not going to overspend in what you eat. And you're going to say, okay, now that I've solved that problem, now how can I start to take the next step and cut back a little bit more and cut back a little bit more? Does that make sense? Is that helpful at all?
Absolutely. It reminds me of sometimes I like to teach my clients this little saying. The saying is, buying this won't solve whatever you're dealing with. So if it's boredom, just reminding yourself if the boredom is always there, that's the root thing we need to change. We need to see, why are you always bored? Why are you always stressed? Like, let's deal with the root cause of the boredom or the stress versus trying to mask that with temporary pleasure, which is like buying something.
Bingo.
So I think that's very similar to what you're saying. Let's solve the real problem.
Yep.
And not just mask over it. Like if you're still hungry, like what's the real problem? First of all, are you really hungry or are you bored? Or are you thirsty?
Good point. Yeah.
That's a big deal too. Like eating, oh my gosh, eating and spending, they go hand to hand. Like people eat when they're bored, people spend when they're bored. I mean, you do all kinds of things when you're
shop
stressed.
when they're bored. Yep.
Yes, it's a stress reliever. Spending and eating, they're both stress relievers. So I can see how some people can do one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think happens to our mindset? Like, let's go to the clutter space right now. So what do you think happens to us mentally when our homes feel messy and disorganized? How does that affect how we just show up in life? Summer's almost here, and if credit card debt is stressing you out, I've got just the thing for you. I'm hosting a brand new masterclass called How to Get Out of Debt Without Giving Up Your Summer Vacation. This class is for women who make good money but feel stuck in the cycle of credit card debt. During this class, I'll walk you through the real reason you keep running your credit cards back up, how to get out of debt and stay out, the common quick fixes to avoid so that you don't end up in even more debt down the line, and a simple step-by-step process to pay off debt without feeling deprived. I'll also be sharing all the details about Own Your Wealth, my brand new private coaching experience. This is my 12-month mentorship where we work together one-on-one to clean up your finances by getting control of your spending, paying off high-interest debt, growing your savings, and investing at a higher level. You have 2 dates to choose from: Sunday, June 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or Monday, June 23rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can sign up now at jermainefoley.com/debt. That's Jermaine with a G, foley.com/debt, or simply click the link in the show notes to sign up. It's totally free, and I'd love to see you there. Let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen time and time again, you then end up in such a negative space, right? There are even studies that show when we would classify, women especially, if a woman is going to classify her home as messy or overwhelming or chaotic or any of these negative terms that we're using, it raises their cortisol levels. So it raises the stress hormone in your body. Now, that is going to cause you all sorts of health problems later down the road, not immediately, but that compounded over time really is going to cause problems on a cellular level in your body. And so, first and foremost, I mean, that is a huge marker and a huge reason for us to start to make these changes. Now, that's not to say that everyone's house is the same either. It's only if you describe your home as messy. If you walk into your home and you're like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff here, but it's not messy, then that doesn't bother you. So we all have what in our industry is called the clutter thresholds, or like these levels of where you feel clutter is really and stuff is overwhelming you. I have one friend who she is so good at like designing little vignettes in her house. You know, she collects things and, you know, she loves antiquing and she loves that kind of like old history kind of vibe. Not my vibe. Not my vibe at all. Her home is gorgeous, not a kind of home I would want to live in. For her, she loves it. For me, too much. So it really does depend on you personally. But back to the question of how does it affect us? It makes us show up not as our true selves, right? It helps like that when we come into our homes should be the sanctuary, the respite, the place where we get to be whoever we want to be, however we want to be, and just the place where we get to recharge after a busy day. Because I know so many of us have to go out into the world and we are performing when we are at our jobs. We are performing when we are out there in the community because we have to be on, right? And we are showing up as this version of ourselves that we want to be. That's great. But if we are not getting to be our authentic selves, at home, we definitely are not going to get to be our authentic selves when we go out into the world, which is what I really want for everyone. I don't want us to have to play, house. I don't want us to play a farce of who we are trying to be in the world. I want us to be able to get the confidence at home so that we can have that confidence when we go out into the world. And if we have too much stuff and it's cluttered and we just are overwhelmed and we don't get to rest and recharge and really rejuvenate at home, it just has a really negative domino effect as we try to go out into the world and be the lively, upbeat, wonderful people we are. It's just that much more difficult.
Yeah. And I love how you said it depends on what you think about your space. That's what matters most. And it's so interesting. Like if you live with people, they may not think, okay, I'm just going to be transparent right here. I like my bedroom to be like minimalist, nothing anywhere. And ever so often, my husband, he takes it in the whole other direction. So we have a little stand in our room and I'll just like clear it off. And within a week, it's back. It's mail. It's just clutter. And it's so interesting because it bothers me, but it doesn't bother him. And then I had to like start to kind of coach myself around it. And I'm like, okay, Jermaine, you don't have to because you can't control him. You can make requests. You can say, hey, hun, can you not do that? But, he might forget because it's a habit. And I've learned that, okay, when it gets like that, if it's starting to bother me, just, clean it up and allow myself to understand like, okay, the clutter itself isn't what's bothering you, it's your thoughts about the clutter.
Mm.
And if you don't want to coach yourself, just clean it up. I don't know. That's just something that I've learned
Yeah.
because in families, we all have different levels of what we think is messy and what we think is not.
Hmm.
And so I don't know, do you ever help your clients figure that out, especially with like kids, partners?
Yeah, and I think you had like that's great. Like I love what you just said there about it's bothering me, right? So then I either need
Hmm.
to work with him to find a solution or I should just deal with it. Like I should fix it myself and clean it up because it's a problem for me. Also creating those habits, doing resets on a more frequent basis might also help or having a place to put the things, right? So if it is mail that's coming in or whatever, like if you had an open container, like a bin or a box that looked pretty that you liked that he could put the stuff in, so it's solving both problems, right? It's pretty for you because you don't want to see all the, 9 million different individual pieces, but it's still somewhere for him to just use as a drop zone. That way it might be a little intermediary step. And then you could say, you know what, weekly, I know I have to go through that. It's just something that we're going to have to go through because if we don't go through it weekly, things are going to get lost. They're going to fall through the cracks. There's going to be mail that doesn't get addressed and we need to solve that. So finding these little solutions, I think is one of the, a great way to compromise there because yes, you are having to live with other people in your home. And one of the great things is that the people in your home are going to test you and make you, a different person, right? Like my daughter, love her. She has made me a much better human. Same with my husband, right? They have both made me a better person because I don't get to be so self-centered. I have to live with other people. I have to live within this relationship that we have formed and we have created our own entity. It's the three of us, right? The three musketeers and we are on a team. And knowing that it is more helpful when you're going through these times that are a little more challenging. I'm not going to say never. I'm not going to say that it never happens because some people aren't the nicest. But generally, if you have a healthy marriage and you are in a healthy relationship, they are not doing this on purpose. They're not doing this to grind at you and to, make you upset. It just doesn't even cross their mind, right? It's not an affront to you. It's just they just didn't even think it was a big deal. And so if they don't think it's a big deal, then why would they do anything different? Because for them, it's fine. So yes, having these conversations, saying like, hey, hon, it does kind of bother me. I've realized it raises my stress level. Like I like the bedroom to be nice and neat. And I noticed it raises my stress level, but I get that for you, this is doesn't bother you. This is a thing. Can we try this new idea that I had? Like I'm going to put a bin here. Do you mind just putting the stuff in the bin instead of just on the flat surface? That would be great. And then just try it and see how it works.
Hmm.
Might be a great way just to test something out and having these conversations from not that you're doing something wrong. It's not
Hmm.
against you as the party that's the egregious party, whatever in your mind, right? It's not against them. It's just a hey, like I just noticed that it kind of just irks me a little bit and it's harder for me to sleep. It just weighs on me mentally. Could we come up with a solution together and
Yeah.
just see how that works?
I love that as well because I always tell people like when you want to have those kinds of conversations, you want to make sure you're doing it from the right energy.
Yeah.
If you're doing it when you're
Oh,
annoyed,
yeah.
it's probably not going to come out right. But if
Nope.
you can put some time and space between feeling the annoyance and like coming up with the solution or presenting the solution or your idea and do it from a place of love or respect or whatever, that energy is going to be definitely needed. So,
Yeah. Can I add something there real quick?
yes.
So if you're struggling with that, one way that I have tried before that has worked, because sometimes it's really hard to get from that place of like, I am so annoyed with you right now. I don't know how to not be annoyed. I have tried meditations and it's really helpful because it's all about finding love and like spreading love to the people that are around you. And so it just takes you through, I mean, you could do it in 5 minutes. And it really, I mean, like I cried the first time I did it. Like I
Hmm.
was just like, oh my gosh, like I really do have all of this gratitude and love inside for the people that are around me. And whether that is even just like your community, your neighborhood, like it's interesting because it kind of like spreads out. So I really, really enjoyed that. Again, not my practice of expertise. It is just something I have tried in my life and really made a difference. So anybody struggling, just you could probably find a YouTube video if you don't have the Peloton app or you don't have a meditation app that you go to. Look that up. I think it's with two T's, METTA.
Ooh, that sounds amazing. I'm going to have to for sure try that. So you mentioned that you have a daughter,
Yes.
and I know that you recently did something special and you wrote a children's book, which I think my 17-year-old needs to read. I'm just saying. So I'm going to have to get it for him. Let us know all about that because I know a lot of my listeners, they have children, and clutter, again, we just talked about it, is
Mhm.
something that we all don't necessarily want, but it's hard to keep up, especially when you have kids, especially when you work and you just have all kinds of things going on in your life. So tell me about this book and what inspired you to write the book and how we can get it, all that good stuff.
Yes, I giggle because as I put the book out, I said it's for basically like ages 3 to 8. So I giggle that you're going to get it for your 17-year-old. However, my daughter's friends, so my daughter is 11, and her friends, even their parents were like, "Oh my gosh, are you in my daughter's room? Am I going to get royalties from this because you described my child?" Um, so I
Yes.
think it really is good for lots of different ages, even though it is a picture book and really geared toward younger children. What inspired me to write this, though, was just the families that I have thankfully been blessed to know in my life, in what I do on my podcast. Because if we are not taught these things when we are children, it is extremely difficult for us to know how to teach our children, right? It's
Mhm.
so hard to have these conversations if you've never had them. And growing up, we didn't think about the amount of stuff coming into our lives. I'm going to age myself here. I was born in 1980. I grew up in the 80s and 90s when plastic toys were in abundance, right? We wanted to, it was so much easier for us to buy more and more and more. And I feel like that was the forefront of like this idea of more is better, right? Being able to buy whatever we wanted. Things were becoming much cheaper. We had a lot more, even though there were economic difficulties during some of those times, things were just so much easier to get than they were prior to that. They are even easier now. So, like, it is so much harder than it was even for my parents because, like we said earlier, everything is a one click buy. It is so easy to fill our homes up with things. It's so easy to see influencers with these giant birthday parties for their 2 year olds, and you feel like you are lacking and you feel like your children need toys. I had an experience like that, very similar when our daughter was 18 months to 2 years old. We had traveled for the 6 months before that, sold 95% of what we owned. And when we moved back, it was like, wow, I felt guilty. I felt guilty for not having all the toys everyone else had. I felt guilty for her. We lived out of a suitcase and lived in Airbnbs for a month at a time. And it was an awesome time. I don't know why I felt guilty. Like looking back, I'm like, oh gosh, that's so silly. But it is true. You always, I think it's human nature to want what you don't have, to see what other people are doing. And whether, we don't ever look and think about, okay, well, what are the bad things in their life? No, 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 no. We just assume everything's great. And we take the good things that we're looking at in their life and apply it right over on top of ours and say, well, I don't have that. But then we don't think that they might be lacking in some things that we have, right? We just don't do that. So I have this whole point of where I was guilty about that and filled up our home with all this stuff and then was like, oh, I'm inundated by all this stuff. And our daughter had a bunch of stuff too. Now she is too young. She doesn't remember it. When we moved, we had moved again. So we moved and filled up a 3-bedroom house and then we moved again. And at that point, we got rid of more stuff again. And so she doesn't remember that transition. I do, obviously. And so this book is to help those parents that are struggling with their kids When you have gotten rid of your stuff, but your children now are like, I don't know about this. This doesn't sound good to me, mom. And it's hard to come at it from a perspective of reason, right? Children don't get reason. They want to keep all their stuff. And so the story just helps walk through, Lenora is the little girl in the story, and her room has just gotten a little messy. She can't find her stuff. She's losing toys, and she's just kind of inundated and she doesn't know what to do. And so mama recommends that let's go through our stuff and we'll give things away to kids that don't have as much. And she gets on board, and then she finds there's some things that she still has these really tight hold to and she doesn't know what to do. And so they give them to specific friends, which really helps her see, oh, my toys are going to live. They're going to another home. They're going to be cared for. They're not just getting thrown away. And I think that's really a hard lesson for children to learn if they've never seen it or experienced it. And so this is just a fun story way to say, like, we can do good things with our toys as well when we give them away and it feels good. And there's a little game in the back to help you give, toss, and keep your things. But yeah, it was written from a perspective of like, I've been there. I know what it's like. And if we have never been taught how to do it, it's hard to teach it. So this is just a great story to help you on that path. It's just a resource for you.
That is really, really cool because I find that there are, again, parallels with, you started off by saying that if parents didn't grow up, with these principles or ideas, it's hard to pass them down to their kids. Same thing with money. If, as a child, you weren't taught about money, and as an adult, you don't feel like you where you should be with money, and you're thinking like, how in the world am I going to teach my kids? Then you feel inadequate, and then you just avoid it. But a book like yours, when it comes to decluttering, can really help facilitate those lessons and those conversations. And so it's funny because my husband and I have been thinking about writing a children's book as well. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I love that you've done it. So tell us the title.
Yes, it is Lenora and her super duper messy room.
Ooh, okay. Lenora and her super duper messy room. And I'm sure we can find it on Amazon.
Yes, it is on Amazon. Yep.
Okay. And we'll definitely link to that book in the show notes. And I'll link to the episode that I was on, which is episode 243. We'll put that in the show notes too, just so people can refer back to both of those. So one of the things you talk about, Deanna, is about aligning your space with your values. So what do you have to tell us about that? Because I talk about aligning your spending with your values. So what do you have to say?
Yeah, I think they're another parallel, right? So what you value is what you should be spending your time, money, and, allotting your things to. So for instance, if you like to entertain, right? If you are a family that loves having other families over and you love hosting dinners and things like that, your space and your home and the things you need is very different than a family that really doesn't want to invite people over to their home. They enjoy going out and being out and about and having those connections outside. They'll go to restaurants with friends and things like that, but they don't necessarily open their home up as much, right? Those are two very different scenarios. You need very different things. If you're the entertaining family, you're going to need probably more dishes than the family that doesn't want to entertain anybody. And they're just very different. And there is no right or wrong. There is absolutely no judgment on what you value or what you don't value. It is very personal. And so once we can get clear, though, on what those values are, and I have a framework that I call the freedom framework. And the last three letters are the DOM part, the decide, oust, and manage. So decide are those values. Decide what it is that you actually want your home to do and be and how you want it to function for you. And then you can oust the things that do not line up to that vision that you have. It's so much easier than to say, this is what I want, or this is the vision I have. These are the values I have. I hold this thing up. Does it help me reach any of these things? And if the answer is no, that is an easy, okay, goodbye. Like I can get rid of that. I don't have to feel guilty about it. I don't even have to second guess or think about it. It's not helping what I just said I want, right? It's not getting me there. So why would I even waste another minute or any space in my house to house that thing. And then the M is to manage. So anything that passes that value test that stays, then you kind of figure out where you're going to keep it, but it just makes that whole process so much easier.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yes.
What would you say to someone who feels bad for letting go
Mm.
of things that they spent maybe a nice amount of money on? And how do you help them?
Yeah, well, that guilt. Oh my gosh, that guilt is very difficult. I
Mhm,
100% get it. I've been there. I think one, is that thing still worth money? Right? Is the first question to ask yourself. Like, is
mhm,
it still valuable? There's oftentimes we bought something that was valuable at the time or was worth a lot of money at the time, and it's no longer worth anything. That is often subjective based on the market, where we are, what's happening in society. So like antiques, for instance, at one point, those might have been worth a lot of money, probably not worth much right now. And so
mhm.
you have to decide, okay, I spent money on it, but holding on to that thing doesn't make that money reappear. Like it doesn't just
Yeah.
turn into money. It's only worth
Mhm,
something if someone is willing to buy it from you. And if it does seem like it's going to be worth money, try to sell it. I do think that when I go to buy something or sell something online, one of my favorite tricks is to see like what is the full price market value for that new, and then I price it at 50%. You just
mhm.
have to know that people aren't going to pay a premium for something that you bought. Like a car, you buy a brand new car, right? The second you drive it off the lot, it's worth 40% less or something like that, right? Isn't that the
I
going?
think so.
I think that's the going idea anyway.
Mhm.
Of course, all of these rules are uh, just things that they're the generalities, right? It's not necessarily set in stone, but that is kind of the going idea. So again, if you bought something, it was worth a lot of money, you can try to sell it, but it's probably 50% of whatever the value is now. So if I could buy that thing on Amazon, if you bought it for $100, but I can buy it on Amazon for $50 today, you're not going to sell it for $50 today because I'm going to buy the new one. You have to think like your customer or the person that's buying it, you could probably sell it for $25. That is just the harsh reality of it. So holding on to something isn't going to bring the money back. That's just a mindset shift we got to get our heads around and then decide, would I prefer to store this thing in my house or would I prefer to let that go, free myself up for bringing in more good stuff, and good stuff being the abundance that I feel, the peace that I'm going to feel, not necessarily physical things that I'm bringing in, more money and abundance into my life because I free up this negative energy and just let it go. And then think, you know what? Maybe it's going to help another family along the
Mhm.
way. Like if I had a table that I can't sell, well, if I donate this thing, think about the family, like envision the family that it's going to go to sitting around, having family dinners, playing the board games that you wanted to play around it. Just having good thoughts around it, I think is really helpful too when we release our things. Again, those lessons are in this book for your children. And I think it's really helpful for you to think then, oh, my things are going to go to a good home. And if you put that energy out there, that will happen. So that's my advice on really if you struggle on something that you spent a lot of money on, knowing just because you hold on to it, you're not getting that money back. The money is already spent, it's out. How can we move past that? Learn from that purchase. Like if it's something you didn't even use, how can we learn from that purchase
Mhm.
and say, okay, I'm going to do better going forward?
I think that's such a good way to phrase it. Like, what can you learn from that experience? And I like how you talked about really, there's two sides of it, right? Yes, you might feel some guilt, and we might need to process through that guilt and regret because at the end of the day, life, I like to say, is 50-50, 50% positive emotions, 50% negative emotions. And you shared that so brilliantly when you said, you know what, you're going to feel some freedom and some abundance once you let that thing go. But you might also have some guilt and some like regret, and we can process through those and keep it moving and still, free yourself and learn that, okay, so next time I just want to buy something for the sake of buying something. How can I manage that differently? So I'm not sitting here having to figure out how to get rid of stuff that I bought on a whim. So as we get to the end of our time together, what's one habit you would offer our audience around just organizing? Let's think of a family. Maybe there's kids, maybe there's a husband or a wife, and they just need to figure out how to get their house more organized. Like, what's one thing? And a lot of times we hear, I don't even know where to start. I'm sure you hear that. Where is that place that they can start?
I like to do wherever it will make the biggest difference for you tomorrow. So that might be your entryway because that's where you come in and you put your stuff down and then you don't have a place for everything. So your keys end up somewhere and, your shoes are all over the floor and, you just threw your bag here or whatever. And it's just kind of the tripping hazard when you come in. And so then when you go to leave the next day, you're like, oh, okay, okay. That's how I'm starting my day.
You're
So I
describing
think,
my mudroom right now. I'm just saying, like,
okay.
so
In
I'm your
your mudroom,
client. I'm
yep,
your
all
client.
right.
Tell me how I'm going to get this
Yep.
mudroom going.
So in your mudroom, figure out what it is that room needs to solve for you, right? It's where you come in and it's where you leave. Anything that does not function or help with that function should be moved somewhere else. So if that means you need to start storing your winter coats because it is now going into summer, let's find another place to house those so you have the capacity, a little bit of open space to actually make sure all the things that you need for summer are being hung up in there, right? So we're going to store the umbrellas, we're going to store the winter gear, we're going to store the galoshes and things we don't need. Actually, you might need umbrellas in the summer, but anyway, we're going to store the things we don't need. I live in San Diego. Sorry, I'm unversed in my winter.
Well, my sister's in California and San Diego, and I remember the song, It Never Rains in sunny, is it Southern California? Yeah.
Although I will say June is terrible. So don't come visit in June. We call it June gloom. It's got a whole thing about it. So the whole day is gloomy and cloudy. The closer you get to the beach, the worse the weather. So it's okay.
Oh my God, this is such a side note. That makes so much sense. We visited LA
Mhm.
June last year, and it was so gray, and it was actually chilly, and I wasn't prepared for that at all.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. PSA to everybody that wants to do a California vacation. Never come in June from a true California native girl. Don't do it. Just don't do it.
There you go. Okay. So
Okay. Back to
my
your
mud
mudroom.
room.
Yes. Take out the things that are not needed for this season because mudrooms are workhorses, right? They're like secondary to the kitchen. You're in there all the time. Then zone it out. Find a place to put the shoes. Find a place to put your bag. Put up hooks. Hooks are my favorite. Just have a place to put all of the things you need. And it doesn't have to be beautiful. Like it can be like, honestly, when you're starting, I find it best to just get a box, just things that you already have. It does not have to be fancy because we want to test the system and like really put it through the rigors and make sure like, okay, this is really what we want. And then you're like, okay, this box is exactly where I want it to be. This has this, and this in it. This is where I put my bag when I come in every day. This is where I put the mail. And then it can be beautiful and we can solve the mail in your bedroom problem. So it can be pretty once you know the system works. Then you go out and buy the bins, the organizers, all the stuff where you're like, oh, this is what I really wanted. The problem is most people start there. They go and buy the bins, but they don't have a system that works for them. So then those bins become clutter. So we want to figure out the system first, then reward ourselves with the pretty things that we love. Is that helpful?
Oh my gosh, so helpful. And when you were saying that, it just reminded me that we need hangers because we have a closet in our mudroom that's a really nice size that is designed for like the winter coats in the summer.
Yeah.
But the problem is I don't have enough hangers. So they just end up all in the mudroom. And that could solve a huge problem. It's just buying some hangers.
There we go. Easy as
There
that.
we go.
And sometimes it is that simple, right? Just taking a moment, looking at the space with a fresh eye and saying like, what is the solution? What's the big problem here? And then what's the easiest way I can solve it?
Yes. And then the other problem for us is four of us and we've got different shoes, right?
Yeah.
So I just need, I think, a shoe rack maybe for the garage, for the shoes we're no longer wearing, like for the boots and things like that. So it's just not all just sitting in the mudroom. So
that is exactly where we put our shoes. So I have shoes in 3 places in my house. The workout, messier, dirtier shoes stay in the garage. They never even come in the house. Then we don't have a mudroom. And then the shoes we wear kind of every day are street shoes and those kinds of things. Our daughter's shoes that she wears on the way to school. So those are in our entry closet. And then the fancy shoes that are special occasion, I'm going out, I'm going on a trip. Those shoes, I don't have that many shoes, but those go in our closet. So those are kind of more purposeful. I need them only occasionally, or if we're switching things out, that those are the shoes that live in my closet because I don't need them all the time.
That makes sense. And then while you're saying that, another thought came in my mind. Yeah. I am holding on to, so I have boys and they've played sports and they don't ask for much, but they like nice tennis shoes, right? And so we spend a nice amount on their tennis shoes. But of course, they've outgrown a lot of them and they're still in the house. They're still, because I feel like, oh my God, we paid $100 for those shoes, and it's just like, well, you can give those away. And some kids will be so happy to just have that. Like, why are you keeping them? So
absolutely bless some other families with those shoes for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. Not even trying to sell them. Let's just give them away. Thank you for the coaching session.
You are welcome. And just think of the energy, like the positive energy you just had around that idea and that thought, like that will come back to you too. Like I am a huge believer of that karmic energy flowing around of, what we give is what we get. And absolutely, I love that. I love the idea of, I don't sell a lot of my things. I really only sell like big bulky things or our daughter's things that she is really held on to, like that are really special. She doesn't have as many of those anymore, but like think about the big toy kitchen or a Barbie dream house that for some reason she thought she wanted. She never played with. Anyway, sell those things. And then she gets to use that money. It's a good money lesson for her to then get to buy the next thing. And so she also gets that lesson of the things I bought aren't actually worth as much as when I bought them. That's interesting. But then 2, I get to save and then use that money to buy something else. So I really like that kind of cycle for our kids as well. So anyway, all right, extra tip.
Ooh, that was so good. I love it. So, oh my gosh, this was such a good conversation. Do you have anything else you want to leave us with before we wrap it up for today?
Yeah, I know it's hard. I know it's a tough road. If you've never decluttered, just like if you've never looked at your finances, it's so easy to just stick your head in the sand and like just out of sight, out of mind. I don't want to deal with it. But I promise you, it is not as hard once you get started, right? I know that you're looking at that drawer or you've got, please don't start in your garage because I know a lot of people listening are like, I've got that one box. If I could just get through that, don't deal with the box first. Like you're building it up to be something way bigger than it is. Just start super small, set your timer for 5 minutes and just deal with one little corner, deal with one little pile, and then work on saying like, okay, I cleared this corner of my desk. I am not going to let my desk get like that again. And then move on to the next section. And then try to be really sacred about the little spaces that you do. And that's how you're going to start to see a lot of progress in your room and in your house and in every part of your life. And it really does build on itself. So, and then don't get down if you skip a day, it's fine. Don't get down on yourself. Just start again tomorrow. It's okay.
Yes, so good. Oh my gosh, Deanna, thank you so much for all of that, all of those tips and strategies. I know I'm going to use them. So let my listeners know how they can stay connected to you.
Yep. You can find me Wannabe Clutter Free. That is where I am, my podcast, my website, my Instagram, all the things. That's easy. And then, of course, if you want the book, that's on Amazon. It's Lenora and Her Super Duper Messy Room.
Awesome. And again, those links will be in the show notes. So you can check Deanna out, grab the book, and then you can also listen to the episode that we did together a few months ago. So again, thank you, Deanna, for joining me. I hope you have an amazing day.
Thank you, Jermaine. Bye.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Wait, before you go, have you checked out my free class? It's all about the steps you need to take if you want to build wealth without going on a strict budget. To sign up, simply go to jermainfoley.com/wealth class. That's Jermaine with a G, Foley.com/wealth class. See you in there.